I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This is super exciting. Our second day of Earth Week. Woohoo. It's been a long time coming, but I'm really excited to be here and be with you guys tonight and talk about our food prints and then share an awesome couple recipes with Molly Beverly tonight. So my name is Annie Baker. I am a volunteer with NASCA, and I'm based in Prescott, Arizona. I'm going to be going over a couple of things relating to our food prints, so kind of the impact that our food choices have. And am totally open to questions, comments. You can put those in the chat. I'd like to remind everyone that we're all different and we all have different preferences and experiences. So if we can just be mindful of our diversity here tonight and honor that. So thanks again for being here. I'm going to pass it off to Jenna with our NASCA intro.
Thank you, Annie. So my name's Jenna Ortega, and I'm an organizer with NASCA, or Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance. And I just want to first say that I'm so proud to be part of this amazing event that Annie took the lead on. And another one of our youth activists, Raina, is going to be helping us out in the chat box tonight. She's amazing. Also, she's doing some work on food and land use and health in Flagstaff. So she's building quite the team, and she's hosting a handful of events herself as well. So thank you, ladies. You guys are amazing. So just quickly about NASCA, we're a local grassroots people-powered movement in Northern Arizona. Our mission is to educate and empower people to take action at the community level, state level, and hopefully one day even beyond that. So we have amazing volunteers. Definitely get involved. If you're not, myself, Carrie, who's the organizer in Prescott and Cottonwood, Annie or Raina would love to talk with you more, even if you only have 5 minutes or 5 hours. I always say reach out and let us know. And then last, before we get started, I just wanted to let you guys know that as nonprofits, both NASCA and Slow Food Prescott, every penny counts for us. And as with so many nonprofits during COVID, it's affected the way we raise funds. So on virtual events, we just drop a link in the chat box. Your donations help fund local community work. So for those of you who are able, your generosity, no matter how much, means so much to both organizations. So thank you very much. And that's all I have for you guys. I'll hand it back over to Annie.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenna. Okay. So I didn't come up with the name Food Prints. I believe I'm going to credit it to Earth Day. .org, the network that is kind of spearheading a lot of events and information sharing. They have so many great resources on the website. Like you can get crazy deep into some of the information that they have to share, as well as like events and help planning, resource guides, teach in lessons, which is super cool. So I urge you to explore that if you have time, especially in the name of Earth Week, because you could get inspired or you could learn something new. And if anything, you'll have a graphic to share on Facebook or something. So again, I'm here tonight to talk to you about food prints. And to start off, maybe we'll get a little temperature on everyone. Just want to know like how you identify with what you eat. So I have this little poll that should pop up on your screen. And in just a second, you can answer that. And I guess whatever fits you best. You know, we might not fall directly into these categories, but I thought it'd be interesting to see who's here tonight. Wait a couple more seconds. Nobody dumpster dives? Okay, so our top and almost all of us have done. So our winner is meat, dairy, and or eggs. And then it looks like we have primarily local, and vegan and primarily seasonally are kind of tied. And then we have vegetarian. And nobody dives. I occasionally dumpster dive, but it's not my main source of food. Oh, and I can share the results like this. Cool. So if you can see our results there. Awesome. Then I got a couple chats saying we don't fit this. Vegan implies things that don't necessarily mean whole foods, among others. So thanks for participating. Just kind of a question to warm us up and get us thinking about our diet choices. Because obviously food affects all of our lives. Some people enjoy culinary techniques and cuisine more than others, but no matter what, our mental and physical health rely on food, and our culture and social lives are influenced by this a lot, as well as our finances and other factors. So we have our food choices that come for all different reasons. Potentially, we're examining the environmental impact of something we're eating. Maybe it's our religious traditions. Maybe we eat specifically just for taste, or maybe we're just getting things that we can get because that's all we can afford. But no matter what your priorities are, your choices have impacts. And so things like industrial animal agriculture, the location of where your food is sourced, and then what you're doing with the food at the end of its life, those kind of all have, I want to say consequences, but they don't have to be bad consequences. So to jump right into it, I know this is a lot of words, but if you've ever heard of the term locavore, it's kind of like a little catch-all for those who eat, their focus on food sourcing is local. There's not an official definition for local. I have done reporting for a system that counts local as within 250 miles. Other people think it's 100 miles. Some people think it's within your district or municipal boundaries. So it kind of does depend on who you're asking, but we all kind of understand the general meaning about this local thing. So when you eat local, you are supporting those in your community. You're supporting your direct economy. You're cutting out some of the emissions that would otherwise be used during transportation, which can really add up. I think something like half of the emissions from our food is because of transportation. That's a very ballpark, unsourced stat right there, but it is a lot of impact when we kind of bring things from far away. So what we can do with our locavore kind of sentiment is just kind of committing to more plant-based foods. Those generally require less processing, less back and forth kind of shipments. Of course, reducing your food waste. And very importantly for this locavore thing is shopping at your local farmer's market. You'll get seasonal fresh produce. You can always opt into a CSA, of which I forget the exact expanded words, but it's when the farm kind of sets you up with a fixed box of whatever they have grown at that point. Each week is when you generally get it, and so it's the freshest. It's directly from your farmer, and we do have those in Prescott. I know, kind of, when I first moved to Arizona, I didn't really think there was much agriculture going on, but I was pleasantly surprised to learn about a whole bunch of amazing things that are happening here. So always consider those local options. In the supermarkets, a lot of the time they'll have a little local tag. You know, this is from a small like local operation. And so it's becoming more widespread, this sharing of information. So that's always an encouraged thing to participate in. Along with that individual action, those first 3 bullet points, we can also kind of focus on gathering with our community. We're sort of getting into the point where that is comfortable again. So in whatever circumstances you can participate in this, community meals are one of my favorite things, but they're also a great place to share recipes and tips, talk about different ideas that you might have for your community and kind of spreading the word in that way. And you can also establish or volunteer at a community garden and or community compost, which Prescott now has a community compost, which was new to us. And there are a couple community gardens. Most of them are geared towards the schools that they are hosted on. But they're great things to see, and you can grow food for the community, and you can donate some of that produce to food banks, and it's super nice to just get your hands in the soil, and it's extremely local. It's right there. And we can advocate for change on a wider scale by encouraging maybe a school or a different organization to offer kind of healthier plant-based meals, maybe sourcing food locally or from sustainable farmers, and along with that, addressing food waste. Which leads me to the next point, starting a petition for elected officials to address food waste, climate change, and inequitable food access in your community, which is definitely a thing here in Prescott. And getting your city officials to talk about that, to bring it to sort of a wider audience, can spark a lot of action to happen in the solutions for these things. So I went to the farmers market, and there are so many amazing vendors there. But I talked to just 2 people, and these are actually meat vendors. So if anyone knows Elbel, I personally don't eat meat, but I enjoyed talking to her and talking to Leslie, the owner, and learning that they process 1 cattle, honestly, I'm not sure of the exact term, every 2 weeks. And that's how she runs it. And they don't do more than that. And I was really surprised to hear that. I was also surprised to hear that the ranch is within 25 miles of where the farmers market is located. So that's some local meat for you right there, as well as the Arizona Ridgeview farm. I haven't been to the property. I haven't talked to the chickens to make sure that they're truly happy, but it was super cool to learn that where these birds are raised is also where they're processed. So it is local, and it is a very small business. And I think, plant-based diets can do a lot for our personal health and for the health of the planet, but not everybody is or can participate in those diets. And so kind of knowing where your meat is coming from is a great step in kind of taking accountability for your meals. So we also have, just a time check, this, I have to move myself, sorry, 1 second. This chart, and it just represents the water intensity of different kinds of food. So visually we can see the proteins that take up a lot of water compared to maybe some starches that take up less, and then fruits and veggies, which seem to take up the least. Although mangoes are pretty water intensive, I didn't know that. And water is just something that we in particular have to kind of be conscious of. I was having a discussion the other day about our aquifers and water tables that are kind of not replenishing themselves. And so just using our consciousness to choose when we have the ability to, select different sorts of food based off of that. I just also wanted to mention deforestation due to farming, and we all know the effects of deforestation. The trees are our lungs, and they produce oxygen, and they kind of contribute to precipitation and adding water to our atmosphere, as well as controlling temperatures. So we don't want to deforest too much. If you know anything about kind of cattle farming in the, I want to say Brazilian rainforest, but it might be countries surrounding as well. A lot of old growth forest is cut down to make room for crops for like soy and corn that will feed cattle. So kind of being conscious of what our purchases are influencing. So enough of me talking for the moment. There's going to be momentarily, I left out health reasons, probably, but I don't remember where that was from. Links to these quizzes, boop, boop, in just a moment in the chat that you can select. I do encourage you to pick the first one, the fun and easy quiz. I know they aren't labeled in the same way, but I'm pretty sure it's the first one, the fun and easy. All of them won't take you long. Some of them are a little prettier than others, but they all have really interesting information, and I wanted to leave the options up in case one kind of called to you more than the other. So take a couple minutes and select a quiz. I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and then we can report back about some cool things or shocking things or upsetting things that you learned through your quiz. So go, go, go. And I won't hum elevator music while you do it. Even though every time there's an interactive, I always feel like there should be a little something. Okay. So I'm looking at the results of mine. And I'm looking good. I did the fun and easy one. And I'm looking at this information on food waste. And we have stats coming in the presentation, but 40%, more than 40% of food is thrown out every year. And this doesn't include just, scraps from our plates. This is stuff from the supermarket that is just going straight from the grocery store to the dumpster. So like this says in front of me, when we waste food, we waste all the resources that took to produce it. Time, water, labor, gas as it was transported, and the money that we spent on it. So I like the tips here. Pretty sure you can see this. Make a grocery list before you go shopping, so I'm not buying things that I won't use. I know it can be tempting for pretty much everyone, unless you're doing a great at your budget, to kind of purchase things when I see them with the little sale sticker, even if I don't necessarily want them. So I'm personally trying to do better at that, but it does make a difference, Oh, I probably didn't need those extra couple carrots because I already have peppers and I can only eat so much in a day. And then it also suggests composting or reusing your food scraps. So something I'm trying to do personally is also when I'm chopping things, taking my veggie scraps and putting them in the freezer so that I can make a stock. I've been seeing it all over the place for so long and I haven't ever done it. So now I'm actually building up my frozen bag, and we'll test that out. So if anyone has any stock making tips, I would appreciate that. But does anyone else have anything that they want to share about the results of their quiz? You can unmute yourself or you could put it in the chat. I'm going to try and pull up the chat. Okay. So I can see you guys and can see the chat box. So if anyone has any, or if you hated the quiz, you didn't like the questions, what quiz did you do and what did you find? The baby carrots, yeah. Okay, Amanda tries to tailor their grocery list based on recipes and group recipes that use similar ingredients. That's a good idea. So that if you do have leftovers, I suppose, you can still incorporate them. I think if I did recipes, that would also just help with kind of knowing what I'm going to eat that week. Cool. Anybody want to share? Okay. We have those links, and they didn't come into the chat very beautifully with the kind of titles like they are in the presentation. But we can share those if you're interested in providing, asking a friend or someone to take a look at them. So this little poll at the bottom says that Americans are willing to eat more plants. 94% of people are willing to eat more fruits and veggies. 55 are willing to try a plant-based meat alternative, and 46 are willing to use dairy alternatives. And I think eating more fruits and veggies does not have to mean, eliminating things that you love out of your diet. It just is better for you and is, as we've seen, a little less impactful. Sorry, I'm reading this chat. Cool. So we have our food waste stats. Like I said, about 40% of food is wasted. We have some equivalents, about 133 billion pounds of food, $161 billion, and over 1,200 calories per person daily. That's a lot. That could feed a lot of people, which goes on to say about 1 billion people globally are hungry. And when we toss this still edible food, it releases greenhouse gases, it wastes the energy that we put into it initially, and it denies somebody the option to eat. And of course, as the human population grows, we can't keep up the same food system that we currently have. We have to adapt to lessen our environmental footprint while still feeding people, while feeding more people efficiently, and feeding them quality food. Because combating food waste does take everyone. It's going to take farmers to individuals, to operations like schools and businesses, but it's not an impossible task, which is very exciting. And so examples of solutions, and I didn't include our awesome community compost or individual compost systems into these solutions, but I did go and talk to the Prescott Community Food Bank, and a lot of food banks take donations that would be thrown away, but obviously since they're being given to people, it's still completely edible food. Stores have maybe quality, I put that in quotes, quality measurements and all sorts of guidelines that they follow, they think they need to follow, but it's really perfectly good food. And so they don't necessarily dumpster dive, but they do take donations from the stores. And I talked to my Arizona Serve director, Annie, about some stuff that we do in our office. So if you want to listen up and tell me, okay, you should be able to hear, yeah?
Even if you don't believe in the fact that food waste is a problem, there are facts. There are 40, especially in Young 40% of food goes to waste, partially because of our ruralness, and partially because of the tourist environment that is this area. Like food goes to waste at a really high percentage here. And then conversely, you have 46% of this county that is food insecure. And obviously there are differing levels of food insecurity, whether that be, the college student who chooses ramen noodles instead of the steak dinner, or whether or not that's the family of 5 that the parents only serve the kids. Like there's obviously varying levels, but just the mathematics of that to me is ridiculous. Like, how is it that we can have so much food waste, so much people that are food insecure, and not find a balance between the two? So, yeah. And so, what do we do here in the AmeriCorps office to kind of combat that? So we kind of had our AmeriCorps, it actually started last year, and we had our AmeriCorps members pay it forward. So for about 2 months, our AmeriCorps members talked with Braised, talked with Little Caesars, talked with Wildflower Bread Company, talked with different companies and said, what is it that you're doing with your excess? And started kind of funneling contributions to Seventh-day Adventist. And the reason we did that is because we wanted it to go to those who are extremely food insecure first. And so those donations go to that program. They have their weekly distribution, and then I pick up the excess from there. And excess can mean things that they either have a huge abundance of, and so it's difficult to store, or think produce specifically that is going to kind of go bad soon. And then I'm really excited because we've actually added another layer to our chain of waste, if you will. One of our members is actually a chicken farmer, and picks up on every Wednesday even more of the produce, feeds her chickens, and then we have obviously the rest gets composted. So we have a very, I think, it's like a small but mighty food waste chain, if you will. So cool. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your dedication to this topic.
No worries.
And,
Yeah, but I think the biggest problem here is the like the tourism and just I don't think I realized the full journey that food like makes. And so a project that was really impactful for me was to literally take one meal and calculate what went into creating that one meal. How much water was it to grow in the first place? How much fossil fuels was it to produce it? Like what transportation costs came to here? And to try to calculate the value of the meal, I think was super fun.
Cool. Yeah, so she's obviously been working on that and getting some of the members, the volunteers, to get involved and just share the love. It's been really awesome. And this is just an infographic from the USDA that I grabbed about some steps to prevent food waste, such as planning ahead, portion control, leftovers, and then composting, and some interesting early 20th century advertisements, kind of telling people not to waste food, which is a funny culture shift now to how restaurants sort of like to overserve you, and we're almost disappointed if not. So I wanted to thank you for being here today. Again, we all have different needs, but even just kind of acknowledging what we're doing, how we're eating, and learning a little bit more about that in the first place is the first step, and then you can start to change from there. But just considering those different factors. I encourage you to research anything, share resources, which some of you are doing in the chat, and maybe volunteer or donate at a local food bank or something. And now I'd like to introduce Molly Beverly, who cut into her time just a little bit. I apologize. She is working with Prescott Slow Foods, has worked in food service and as a chef, many other things, a food activist and teacher, and is going to present to us a really delicious recipe, which of course I had to test out before we presented. And let me tell you, it is delicious. If you usually don't like tempeh, the braising process just makes it delicious. So I'm going to pass it off, and thank you all for listening to me.
Okay, here we go. Well, there's a lot of difficult things about food choices these days, but I think everybody ends up really wanting satisfaction. It's so important. And we love burgers because they are so satisfying, whether you're a meat eater or not. And here is a burger alternative that is earth-friendly, nutritious, and delicious. It starts out with soybeans. And by the way, if you end up making this from the soybeans, make sure you buy organic and American or Canadian grown. So soybeans are very high in protein, makes them an excellent source of protein, excellent meat substitute. And tempeh is kind of a cross between a cake of soybeans and a mushroom. If you think about it that way, then you can kind of see what's going on here. Of course, like other beans, they're really hard to digest. they have oleosaccharides, which are very complex carbohydrates, and they get into your gut and they, let's just say they rumble around down there. So Tempeh was developed in tropical Java in Indonesia, where the perfect conditions existed. They had high heat, high humidity, they had native soybeans, and they had this fungus, the Rhizopus oleosporus fungus, which I'm going to show you that word in a minute. And it occurs naturally on these big hibiscus leaves and teak tree leaves. And so people would cook up the soybeans and they would do like a tamale, you know, but they would use those leaves and they would wrap them up, and this fungus that lived on those leaves would start doing its work on the tempeh, on the soybeans. So in order for you to do that, you're going to take your soybeans and you're going to soak them for a couple of hours, and then you rinse them, you skim them, and then you rub them together really good because you need to get the skins off. And then you boil them for less than an hour, you skim them again, you drain them, and you pat them dry, and you have something that looks like this. Lots of recipes I looked at called for whole soybeans, and we like to crack them in a big old hand mill, but you might not have the hand mill, and I don't think it's necessary. So you come down to this pile of nicely pre-cooked but still firm soybeans. And by the way, I want to say that the recipe for the tempeh and for the braised, the smoky braised tempeh burgers is also in the chat box, and you can download it there onto your computer. So you inoculate your soybeans with the Rhizopus oleosporus, the same Rhizopus oleosporus that was on those leaves in Java, and you mix it up also with a little bit of vinegar, and the vinegar creates an acid environment that deters bad bacteria that you wouldn't want in there, the spoilage guys. And you mix it in really well, and makes sense. You get those beans inoculated. So I use baking sheets and parchment paper, and I make quite a big batch when I make it. So you can see it there. I kind of compress it so it's going to be like a cake, and I wrap it up in parchment paper and I tape it shut, and maybe you can see there's some little holes in it. Lots of people make this in Ziploc bags, and they just compress it so it fills the bags, and then they press some holes in it because the spores, which is essentially like a mushroom, it needs a little air to breathe. So then you put this stuff in your Java incubator, right? And I can't quite see the whole screen. I guess you can. Up above there, there's stuff in the way here. This is our refrigerator incubator. We have an incandescent light that is on the controller, so you can turn up and down the intensity of the light, and thereby adjusting the temperature. A pan of water, we get 88 degrees about and 90% humidity, just like Java, right? Sandor Katz tells a story of how he started making this in Tennessee, where it was 88, 90 degrees out and 90% humidity, and all he had to do was protect it from the insects getting in. It takes about 24 hours. These are other samples of incubators. If you go to the tempehlab.com, they have lots of information, but you see you could use an ice chest. You can use an electric fry pan there. You can even use your oven. See, here are the plastic bags. That's one way to do it. I didn't mention that soybeans are kind of hard to buy. The natural food stores don't carry them. And they're even hard to get, like if you walked into Sprouts and said, I want to buy a 25-pound bag of soybeans, you might not be able to do it. I pretty much had to get what I needed for this online, including the spore. So here you see the mycelium. Now, what are those guys doing? They are thread-like branches of the fungi. They're actually like the fungi's body. And they move into a food source at a microscopic level. They secrete enzymes and they dissolve the big molecules and break them into simpler carbohydrates in this sense that we can use, that we can digest. They take those great big molecules that don't digest so well and digest them for us. So the oleosaccharides, those are the complex carbohydrates that are not easy for us to digest. And the rhizos oleospores work so well that the tempeh ends up being easy to digest. So you don't get the results of having the lots of people have from beans. It's easy to digest. You can feed it to babies. So this is an excellent substitute for meat. It has 18 grams of protein in a 3-ounce serving and has a lot of other nutritional benefits too. And unlike all of the lots of the veggie burgers, it's got a really nice firmness to it. It isn't squishy or mushy, and it has a really great flavor, especially when you do what we're going to do to it. And it stores really well. Even cut up in the refrigerator fresh, you can keep it for a week. You can freeze it indefinitely. I make these big batches and I keep it in the freezer. So it has this nice, fresh, mushrooming aspect to it. And those mycelium have gone and held the whole mass together. Now, you might not want to do all this part and you can just go buy it in the store, which is a lot more expensive, but at least now you know what it is. It's mushrooms and soybeans. That's it. So, of course, consuming less animal products is a great weapon against many environmental challenges, and it's a real effective way to improve your own health. So here's how you make smoky braised tempeh that is really delicious. That has something really, I never ate much tempeh. I never could really figure out how to make it taste good. It had some real drawbacks until I found this stuff. Okay. So once you have your tempeh, you cut it into some slabs and you create a marinade out of soy sauce, cider vinegar, brown sugar, liquid smoke, smoked paprika, garlic powder, olive oil, and water. And you let it sit for at least a half hour and you turn it and you shake it some, and it can sit for longer than that. Just let it soak up. Then you put a little oil in the bottom of the pan and you let it brown a little bit on one side. And then you pour half of the marinade into the pan and you let it braise. That's how you like that braise. So then you turn it over and you pour the other half of the marinade in on it and you let it do the same. So a braise is a combination between a fry and a boil. So you let it boil in the marinade and then it fries a little because there's some oil in that marinade. And what you want at the end is something that's brown like that. So you get a little bit of that char flavor on it. So once you have this, it goes with all the burger stuff. And it's not only delicious as a burger, because I always have leftovers. I mean, today I was kind of in a hurry and I just found a piece of it. I slapped it between two pieces of bread and put a little ranch dressing on it. I really did this, and it was great. And it just disappears from the refrigerator because you can throw it on things. You can put it on a pizza. You can put it in the salad. It has that smoky, oomphy flavor that I don't know about you, but man, I just crave that. So I want to thank Isachandra Moskowitz, the author of Vegan Omnicon and many other vegan books. This, if you think vegan cooking is boring or dull, or my favorite new word, meh, like not exciting, she's the one who really knows how to add the spice to food. And in my whole career, that's been what I feel is really important about changing diet. I also want to thank Sandor Elix Katz, who is the grand master of fermentation. His big, thick book is The Art of Fermentation. He has started the fermentation revolution in this country. And I want you to all know about Slow Food Prescott and Slow Food USA. You can join Slow Food Prescott on our Facebook page. There's a way to sign up for the newsletter, which is always entertaining and delightful. Or you can just send me an email. That email address comes to me. And that is the end of my presentation. I have no idea how much time that took, but I can unshare the screen now.
Thank you, Molly. That was awesome. And I urge you guys to make this recipe. I think you'll be surprised at like how tasty it is.
So if people have questions, I'd be glad to answer them. You don't see. Are the commercial packages of tempeh also chunky like yours? I think I've used a lot of commercial tempeh, and they're more compressed and they don't taste quite as fresh, but they work fine in this recipe. We buy tempeh from Trader Joe's and it's delicious and cost effective. I would love to try doing this sometime, but time does not allow at this stage. It's awesome in stir fries and great snacks. So, you know, part of me showing you how to make tempeh, a few of you might get inspired, is just to show you what it is, because lots of people are kind of turned off, like, what is that weird stuff, you know, spoiled beans and moldy beans, you know, but, you know, mushrooms are mold. So Annie says she's going to try making. Annie, you will love making it. It takes 24 hours. And then you go in there and you look at it, it's got all that beautiful like white fur on it. Oh yeah, someone doesn't have the time or patience. That's fine. Then you can just buy it. Or room for an incubator refrigerator. Well, that's why I showed you those other pictures, because you can do it in an ice chest. You can do it in an electric fry pan, which you can probably buy down at Dave, DAV, or someplace else. But you don't have to make the tempeh. But now you know what it is. Any other questions?
While we wait for questions, I'm going to pull up some more slides. Let's see what this question Did you see that, Molly? How much is the inoculant?
The inoculant, I hate to say Amazon, but you know that Tempeh Lab has it for sale. And you get, believe me, a lifetime supply. If you get it, you should share it with everybody. And I think it's under 20 bucks.
Awesome.
I didn't say that you could also make tempeh out of other kinds of beans. And you can also add grains. I made it with black-eyed peas once, but I went back to the soybeans because I actually like the texture better. The texture is a real important thing for me after all the mushy veggie burgers.
Awesome. So thanks again, Molly. On NASCA's website, there's a Veg Pledge if you're interested in that. You can pledge to meatless Mondays, eating full vegan for a week, vegetarian for 21 days, recruiting your friends. And I mean, you can even commit to maybe one meal a day as plant-based, or one meal without meat, or there's any number of things. And I tell all my loved ones that it's really just the consciousness and reduction that gets you started and really matters. And I'd like to talk about tomorrow. We have 2 more food events, super exciting, that we can attend. So register for those if you're not, or don't forget about them. Jenna, you might want to chime in because I forget what times they're at. I think one is like either 11 or 2 and the other is like 6.
1 p.m. for the first one and 6 p.m. for the second one, which is, so the first one you guys should definitely sign up for. Even if you aren't available at one, don't tell anybody, but register and we can send you out the recording. But it's a super important event to support this really cool project going on in Camp Verde, and the panel is 5 amazing women. So definitely sign up for that. And the second one is on COVID-19 and climate change in Indigenous communities. And we have 2 really good panels for that as well. So, and then the full lineup of Earth Week events is also in the chat. We have a ton. So I hope you guys participate as much as you can. And we appreciate you guys, your support and showing up to these events that are amazing. Volunteers put so much effort into planning, and they would love you guys to be there.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm kind of like sliding through some of the other options for the region, depending where you're at. Feel free to ask us any questions. You can email us later. And if you know any youth, any young activists, direct them to the mocktail hour with me and the youth climate action team. It's not on Zoom, but it is online. So it'll be an interesting new platform where we just want to kind of get together with youth and share our sentiments and share what we're working on and support each other. So if you want to tell anyone about that, and then definitely hop on to the website and see which events interest you, because we'd love to see you there. Okay, let me stop sharing. Sweet. So I want to thank everyone again for coming out tonight. You've been an awesome crowd. And yeah, remember your food prints.
There's a couple more questions in the chat.
Yeah.
One, does the inoculant last? Yes, it keeps refrigerated. Probably, I don't know. I've had it at least a year. I think it's refrigerated as long as yeast last refrigerated. And the name of the inoculant, if you're shopping for it, just Tempeh inoculant. You don't need to have the Rhizopus oleosporus name, just Tempeh inoculant. There are several brands, but that Tempeh lab, that place carries everything. They might even carry soybeans. You know, I didn't look at that. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Go make it.
Dinner.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks for trying it out.
Yeah.
That was a good recommendation. That really pulled it off.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you guys. Have a great night. I'll send you all a follow-up email if you didn't get all of those recipes and everything out of the chat, and reach out anytime. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Molly.
Thanks for working on this.
Thanks, Raina. Thanks, Carrie.
Yes, thanks. Night, everyone.